In my past life, my sister forced me to marry an ugly and poor thug. 10 years later, that thug became a billionaire stock market genius, and I lived in luxury. After being reborn, my sister rushed to hold the thug's hand and did everything she could to marry him. But she didn't know, the real stock genius was me. Her man knew nothing and was just a puppet I put on stage. When I was reborn, I was in a dim sports equipment room. In front of me was a figure breathing heavily. It was my ex-husband, Jack. He ripped open my shirt buttons and pressed his face to my neck like a wild beast. I was weak, my limbs spasming uncontrollably. In the chaos, I realized time had turned back. I was 17 again, back to the day my sister Wendy drugged me. Just as Jack was about to tear off my shirt completely, the sports room door busted open from the outside. Someone rushed in. It was Wendy. She looked like she had sprinted over, her hair sticking to her sweaty face. She didn't care to fix it and hugged Jack tightly. "Jack, don't be with her, you're mine." I suddenly understood. Wendy and I had both been reborn. In the past life, Wendy liked the school heartthrob, but he wrote a love letter to me. Wendy went mad with jealousy, drugged me, and forced me to marry the worst thug in school, Jack. A decade later, Jack became the billionaire investment tycoon, Q God, making me a wealthy socialite. Every day, I carried rare Hermes bags and drove a $7 million Rolls-Royce. Everyone envied me. They said, "Daisy really married a great man." Back when Jack was down and out, Daisy saw his potential. Now she lives a blessed life. But Wendy's rich second-generation husband had long fallen into debt, chased by creditors. He would even flatter Jack. "Brother-in-law, you're Q God, right? I admire you so much. Can you help me with my investments?" Whenever Wendy saw me, her eyes were filled with uncontrollable jealousy and deep regret. Sure enough, at a family gathering, after Jack said he was going to the bathroom, I saw Wendy follow him to the corner. In the corridor, I stood in the shadows, eavesdropping through a thin door. Wendy was crying, her voice slurring with drunkenness. "Jack, you liked me back then." Wendy hugged Jack, trying to kiss him. Jack gasped and pushed Wendy away forcefully. He said stiffly, "That was over 10 years ago." Wendy fell to the ground, still crying. "Have you forgotten? You brought me breakfast every day, gave me rides, said I'd always be your goddess, and you'd do anything I asked. Jack, you were supposed to be mine." Jack ignored Wendy, hurriedly fixing his clothes she messed up, and stormed out. His expression was like facing an unavoidable plague. Wendy lost all hope, slumping on the cold bathroom floor. I opened the bathroom door, looking down at her, and spoke coldly. "Stop sitting there. Anyone who knows would think you failed to seduce my husband. Anyone who doesn't might think you're acting in some sad teen movie." Wendy looked up sharply, her eyes full of hatred. "Why you, Daisy? What makes you better than me? Why do you get to marry into wealth?" I coldly shook off her hand. "Get it straight, Wendy. I'm with Jack because of you. Seeing Jack successful now, you regret it. Too bad, it's too late." Wendy stared at me intensely, then shook her head and laughed viciously. "Daisy, you're wrong. It's not too late." Back then, I didn't understand what she meant, but now, looking at my 17-year-old body, I understand. Wendy might have bound some kind of system, and brought us both back to 17. Living another life, she wants to win back the man who should have been hers. Now, in the sports equipment room, Jack was breathing heavily, his face filled with desire. He looked at me. "I feel terrible." Wendy forcibly turned Jack's head, making him look at her instead. "Jack, I love you." She kissed him actively, and soon they were entwined. Watching them kiss feverishly not far away, I struggled to get up, buttoned my clothes, and stumbled out. Thank heavens. Thank you, Wendy. I never dreamed that I could escape this nightmare and start over. In my past life, Wendy drugged my and Jack's drinks, locking us in the sports equipment room. Then she brought our parents and neighbors to catch us. The neighbors saw Jack and me in disarray. My parents felt disgraced, convinced no other man would want me, and forced me to marry Jack. When I refused, they locked me at home, giving no food or water, beating me daily. Wendy cried beside them, pleading, "Just marry Jack. Otherwise, for the sake of the family's name, they'll have to beat you to death." Eventually, near death, they forced me to marry Jack. Even though I later had riches, this incident was a lifelong shadow. Now, I've finally escaped this shadow. At dinner, Wendy returned, her face flushed with excitement. She couldn't wait to announce that she wanted to marry Jack. Our parents were so shocked they dropped their chopsticks. "Wendy, why? Jack keeps failing and is in his 20s still repeating grades. How is he good enough for you?" Wendy shook her head, insisting, "Mom, Dad, I promise you, Jack is just down now. He will have a great future." Our parents couldn't believe it and tried to convince her more. Mom even started to cry. Finally, annoyed, Wendy shouted, "It's no use stopping me. I've already given myself to Jack." She touched her belly, I might already be carrying his child. Our parents were stunned. Seeing her parents' shocked and hopeless faces, Wendy calmly smiled. She sat down next to them, lovingly putting her arms around their shoulders. She started to comfort them. Mom, Dad, you have to trust your daughter. Remember when I told Dad not to get involved in business, and Mom to stop going to that shady clinic out east for treatment? Guess what? The guy who advised Dad just ran off with the money, and that dodgy clinic had a serious medical mishap. See, everything I say comes true. People have been calling me a lucky star since I was a kid. Did you forget? After Wendy spoke, her parents' expressions began to relax. She continued to persuade them. So, you have to trust my judgment in men too. Jack is destined to be wealthy. We'll have a great life. Mom was the first to waver. Really? Wendy laughed. Of course. Dad, too, began to believe Wendy. He started worrying. If Jack gets rich, will he mistreat you? Wendy smiled calmly. No way. Jack is the type who spoils his wife. I remember in my past life, after Jack's identity as Q-God was revealed, countless young beauties chased after him, but he only had eyes for me, his original wife. He'd open the car door for me, serve me food during meals, and would follow my lead. Wendy's current husband, despite being deep in debt, couldn't stop ogling younger girls. No wonder Wendy was so jealous. Listening to Wendy praise Jack in front of our parents, I silently ate my meal, pretending not to hear. But even though I ignored her, Wendy wasn't done trying to make herself known to me. That night, Wendy barged into my room. She stared at me, engrossed in my homework, and sneered. Daisy, don't think I don't know what you're up to. You pretend to be all quiet, but you're scheming to steal Jack from me, right? Honestly, my sister's mindset was laughable. It's almost embarrassing to admit she's my sister, but I was happy to let her misunderstand. If Jack could occupy all her attention, she wouldn't compete with me for what's truly important. As she talked, Wendy came closer. She grabbed my chin, forcing me to look at the mirror beside us. You might as well give up. Look at yourself. How could you ever compete with me? In the mirror was a skinny, dark-complexioned girl with thick-rimmed glasses and a worn-out school uniform. Next to her was Wendy, with her fair skin, silky black hair, and wearing a trendy dress. She was a head-turner on the street. I wasn't as pretty as Wendy. Plus, our parents were biased, giving Wendy the best food and clothes while leaving me undernourished and sickly. The contrast was obvious. Look at you. Do you really think any guy would like you? Wendy kept on taunting, as if venting all her past frustrations. Jack was my lapdog. He only married you because he couldn't get me. Next time, I won't give you the chance. Once I'm of age, I'll marry him. When he becomes Q-God, you'll have no chance. Half of all that wealth will be mine. Wendy's eyes gleamed. Yep, at his peak, Q-God had assets worth billions. A divorce could get her half, plenty to live off and date whoever she wanted. I twirled my pen, bowing my head deeply. Wendy thought her words struck a nerve, but I bowed my head to hide my smile. Dear Wendy, I love how you underestimate me. Your ingrained arrogance means that even if you relived 1,000 lives, you'd never guess that the real Q-God is me. Yes, I'm the one who built a fortune from nothing with my smarts, courage, and luck. First by making huge gains in the stock market, then by heavily investing in Bitcoin at the perfect time, achieving complete financial freedom. My ID on the investment forums, Q, was just a random keystroke, so they called me Q-God. Many were curious about my true identity. Knowing I couldn't stay hidden forever, I put Jack in the spotlight as my puppet, or rather, my scapegoat. Our world has many ups and downs. Sudden wealth brings envy, and sudden poverty brings danger. In those years, Jack was kidnapped 3 times and beaten up by enemies 4 times. When he returned with me to visit family, he'd just been beaten. He had a broken rib. That's why when Wendy hugged him, he grimaced and pushed her away. Despite bearing all the attacks in the spotlight, Jack never dared reveal the truth. He didn't dare cross me. Being my puppet, he at least enjoyed luxury. Without me, he'd be nothing. Looking at the clueless Wendy, I smiled genuinely. Wendy, I said softly, I wish you and Jack a lifetime of happiness. Go ahead. Bind yourself to him, but I'll focus on my exams, save money for college, and get far away from this family. I sincerely hoped Jack and Wendy would stick together. However, after school, Jack stopped me. He skidded his bike to block my path and gave a cocky whistle. Daisy, you look great today. What's the occasion? I stepped back, feeling a chill. I knew Jack's true nature. He was a complete creep. In his world, the unattainable was always the most desirable. Last life, it was Wendy. Now it was me. Clenching my teeth, I tried to sidestep him. I'm going to work. Let me pass. I've been working at a supermarket recently, helping with the cash register to save some money for myself. The boss is really nice. Seeing me in a school uniform that's too short and doesn't fit, he gave me some of his daughter's clothes to wear. A light blue cardigan and a snowy white skirt made me look a lot prettier than usual. Turns out, Jack noticed me. Right now, he's coming over, grinning slyly. Working? Doing what kind of work? I've got some work for you too. Want to do it? He said while trying to get closer to me. I held back my nausea, quietly slipped my hand into my bag, and grabbed a pair of scissors for self-defense. But before I could take them out, someone rushed out from the side. She shoved me aside hard and stepped in front of Jack protectively. Daisy, why are you always sticking to Jack for no reason? Her voice was loud, finger pointing at my nose. Trying to seduce Wendy's fiancé. Have you no shame? Jack stood at a distance, touched his nose, and chimed in. I just happened to meet Daisy while riding my bike, and she wouldn't let me leave. Hearing this, Wendy got even angrier. Daisy, still not giving up. Look at yourself in the mirror. Do you think you're good enough for Jack? I'm marrying Jack for sure. If you dare seduce him again, I'll have our parents sell you to the mountains. She then pulled Jack away and left, but clearly, she still wasn't at ease. That night when I got home, I found my room had been ransacked. The tin box where I kept my savings was lying open in the middle of the room. All the money I had saved from working at the supermarket was gone, and Wendy held the cash in her hand. Wendy, looking smug, waved the cash in one hand and pointed at my nose with the other, her long nails almost poking my face. This is the stash of money Daisy has been hiding. She's been hanging out all the time, actually going to sleep with the supermarket owner. I saw him give her money and buy her new clothes. Wendy pointed at the cardigan and skirt I was wearing and sneered. Now, everyone probably knows there's a mistress in our family. Before I could say anything, Dad, with a gloomy face, rushed over and slapped me hard. Mom stood beside him, crying and complaining. People said this girl was unlucky. I took so many abortion pills and still couldn't get rid of her. Now look, she's disgraced our whole family. That's how my parents are. They've always unconditionally favored Wendy. Wendy could do no wrong. I, labeled a jinx by a fortune teller before birth, caused Dad's business to go bankrupt shortly after I was born. So, whatever I do is wrong. Then Dad seized all my savings and started beating me with a belt. Wendy stood by with a self-satisfied smile, her tone manipulating, but pretending to be sympathetic. Daisy, don't blame Dad for beating you so hard. If he doesn't, you won't learn your lesson. Girls need to have self-respect. Don't you ever earn that dirty money again. I passed out from the intense pain. When I woke up, I was lying in the yard. My parents had taken Wendy shopping. Wendy was going to get engaged soon, so they were buying her a nice dress. I had lost all my savings, and I didn't even have any medicine around. Struggling to get up, I made my way outside the yard. Next door was my cousin's house. Only his wife was outside doing laundry. Seeing me so debilitated, I couldn't even speak. She was shocked. Daisy, my gosh, what happened to you? My cousin's wife dropped the clothes and came to support me, only to find her hands smeared with blood. Hold on, I'll get some medicine for you. Lying on the ground, I looked up at the sky. The moon was bright, but there are always dark corners in the world that it can't shine on. My cousin's wife was applying medicine to my wounds. How could your parents be so cruel? After all, you're their own daughter, she lamented, wiping away tears. She was a kind-hearted woman but had a hard life. Barely literate, she had to quit school after 3rd grade to help at home. Later, her father sold her to my cousin to pay for her brother's bride price. Now, she was tenderly treating my wounds, and I touched her arm, which was also covered in scars. My cousin often beat her. In my previous life, she died before I turned 20. After a long silence, I suddenly asked, do you have any savings? She paused, then sighed in relief. I do, about 2,000. Why? I'm not asking for your money for school. I want to help you earn more, I explained softly. I can turn your 2,000 into 20,000, even 200,000. She laughed, not believing me, and spoke to me as if speaking to a child. Take the 2,000 for school. You can pay me back when you graduate. We're family, no interest, of course. I stayed quiet, gazing at the endless night sky. In my last life, I returned too late to save her. This time, I'm determined to help her. And myself. Wendy, you're too foolish. With the chance to turn back time, all you can think about is getting a man. While my head is full of stock codes, do you even realize what kind of advantages you've handed me? Early Monday morning, I went to school with the money my cousin's wife gave me, planning to secretly escape during the long break to open an account at the securities firm. I never expected that just as I rode my bike out of the school gate and hadn't gone far, a figure would suddenly leap out from an alley ahead. The person swung a spiked wooden stick at me. In my rush to dodge, I fell off my bike, hitting the ground hard. Ignoring the pain, I quickly covered my backpack which was stuffed with all the secret money my cousin-in-law had given me. In front of me were a pair of brand-name shoes. Looking up, I saw a round, chubby face looking down at me with a malicious smile. I recognized him. He was Wendy's husband from her previous life, Ken. Ken had been Wendy's loyal backup since middle school. He was a wealthy heir, whose dad did business in the South. While we were still stuck in drab school uniforms and wearing knockoffs, Ken knew all about foreign luxury brands. Ken had chased Wendy for years. Wendy disliked his looks but couldn't let go of his wealth, so she kept stringing him along, using him as her backup throughout her teenage years. Eventually, Wendy got older and didn't find a better catch, so she married Ken. Little did she know, shortly after their marriage, Ken's family went bankrupt. Wendy, who had invested with them, was also implicated. The whole family ended up in debt and couldn't even use public transport. No matter how miserable Ken might be in the future, at this moment, he was still that arrogant, wealthy scion. No one dared to offend him. So, protecting my backpack, I cautiously stepped back, not wanting a direct confrontation, but Ken wouldn't let me go. He kicked my face with the toe of his shoe and sneered, "Wendy always said her sister was a sneaky little brat. Caught you red-handed sneaking out of school. Where are you off to?" I whispered, "Just buying some stuff." "Buying stuff?" Ken laughed. His laugh suddenly stopped as he snatched my backpack, dumping its contents on the ground. Pencils and books scattered everywhere, and an envelope fell out. I tried to grab it, but Ken was quicker, picking up the envelope. "So much money." Ken waved the bills. "What are you buying?" "Wedding treats for your sister and me." He pocketed the envelope and said coldly, "Don't think I don't know. Wendy told me everything. You're greedy and jealous of her, so you became someone's mistress to earn money for fancy dresses. Did you steal or cheat for this money?" "I'll tell Wendy right now." Ken kicked me into the wall, dust flying everywhere. I coughed, but my mind suddenly cleared. Following me, Ken was definitely acting on Wendy's instructions. We've both been reborn. Even after snatching Jack, Wendy doesn't trust me, so she sent Ken to tail me. But that's not the point. The crucial part was what Ken just accidentally let slip. "Buying treats for your sister and me." I burst out laughing. Perfect. Ken doesn't know that my sister is already with Jack. Makes sense. To Wendy, Ken is still useful. If Wendy told Ken she was going to get engaged to someone else, how could he continue to obey her? Ken was about to leave when he noticed my smile. He frowned and asked, "What are you laughing at?" My smile widened. "I'm happy for my sister. You love her so much and protect her. I'll have a great brother-in-law in the future. I really hope you get married soon," I said softly. Ken liked hearing that. His eyebrows relaxed, but he still eyed me suspiciously, saying nice things now. "Want me to let you go?" "You don't need to let me go. I haven't done anything wrong," I said, standing up and dusting myself off. "This money is from my cousin-in-law. She heard about Wendy's happy news and asked me to buy gifts for Wendy." Ken's expression changed. He frowned. "What happy news?" Feigning confusion, I replied, "No idea, but I heard from my parents that they plan to arrange an engagement for Wendy before she goes to college. Since folks here know each other well, it's better than being tricked by bad men in a big city." I observed Ken's reaction and then chuckled. "Idiot, you still don't get it." Ken looked puzzled. "Get what?" "Wendy's engagement is definitely with you," I said, beaming. "Think about it. Everyone knows you like Wendy. My parents said childhood sweethearts. Among the boys around, who fits my sister better than you?" Ken was suddenly pleased but uncertain. "Why hasn't Wendy mentioned this?" I teased. "Wendy has thin skin. She must be shy, but she'll tell you soon. I've often seen her heading to the woods behind the school lately, probably preparing a surprise for you." Ken, completely smitten, asked excitedly, "Really? Just go check," I suggested. I extended my hand. "Give me the envelope. I still need to pick a dress for Wendy. Do you prefer pink or blue?" "I'll choose according to your taste." Calling him brother-in-law made Ken overjoyed. Without thinking, he shoved the envelope back at me. "Pink." Then he dashed toward the school. I figured he was eager to see what surprise Wendy had for him. I smiled, whistling, as I hopped back on my bike, feeling great. This surprise would be one Ken would never forget. I reached the securities company, where my cousin-in-law Victoria was anxiously waiting outside. It was her first time in the trading hall. Seeing the fluctuating colors and numbers on the screen overwhelmed her. "Daisy, can you understand this stuff?" I didn't even need to look. Ever since I bought my first stock, the market trends from 10 years before and 10 years after have been engraved in my mind, unforgettable forever. I didn't mention any of this to my sister-in-law. I just smiled and said, "I understand it, trust me." At the securities company, I also saw a familiar figure. It was Ken's father. He was originally doing some paperwork, accompanied by a secretary, but then he got a phone call. His face changed, and he rushed into a black sedan parked at the door, heading toward our school. I stood at the door, silently watching the car disappear. My sister-in-law, having finished her paperwork, came to me. "What are you looking at?" I glanced at the sky. "Nothing. It's just that the weather is changing." And sure enough, it changed. With my help, Ken eagerly went to the little grove, excited to see the surprise Wendy had for him. Unexpectedly, as soon as he entered the grove, he heard indecipherable noises. Upon closer inspection, he found his goddess Wendy with Jack, a guy he had never even looked at. This was probably the biggest shock Ken had experienced in his nearly 20 years of life. By the time he realized what was happening, the sound of an ambulance was already filling the air. Ken had beaten Jack so badly that he had to be rushed to the hospital for emergency treatment. When I arrived at the hospital, Jack was already awake, wrapped in gauze and lying motionless on the bed. The scene was quite familiar to me. After all, in my previous life, I had pushed him in front to shield me, and he often ended up beaten like this. But Wendy had never seen such a scene before, and she was crying like her life depended on it. By Jack's bedside, Ken was brought into the hospital room by his father, who was initially worried about his son going to jail and wanted to negotiate a settlement. But Ken, like an enraged bull, charged at Jack the moment he entered the room. If it weren't for his father's two quick-witted secretaries holding him back, Jack might have been thrown out the window. "Ken, apologize now." Ken's father was urgent. "Apologize for what? I did nothing wrong." Ken panted heavily, pointing at Jack on the bed. "He assaulted Wendy. I beat him up because of that." Poor Ken. As a normal person without the perspective of rebirth, his first reaction upon seeing Jack with Wendy was naturally this. At this moment, Ken looked hopefully at Wendy. "Wendy, say something for me. I did it to save you." Ken's father also saw a glimmer of hope, looking at Wendy. "Young lady, you were a witness. Tell everyone the truth." For a moment, all eyes in the room were on Wendy. She bit her lip, hesitating for a long time. Finally, she blushed and said softly, "We were willing." Ken turned pale instantly. "What? Wendy, you can't be serious." Even though Jack was encased in plaster, he managed a smug smile from the bed. As a small-time thug, he had never in his life managed to make someone like Ken, a wealthy young master, suffer. Wendy had given him this chance, and he was ecstatic. "That's right, Wendy and I are in love," Jack said loudly, ignoring the pain from his wounds. "Ken intentionally hurt me. He should be in jail." Ken's father's face turned dark. He stepped forward, not looking at the bed-confined Jack, but instead tried to pressure Wendy. "I advise you to think carefully before you speak." Ken's family was powerful and wealthy. Even my parents were getting scared, urging Wendy, "Wendy, why don't you think it over?" It was clear Wendy was really torn, but she couldn't afford to offend Jack. Not only that, she had to hold on to Jack tightly. After all, he was Q-God, and compared to the future billions of wealth, Ken's family seemed insignificant at this moment. So she gripped Jack's hand tightly. "There's nothing to think about. Jack and I are in love, and anyone who hurts Jack should pay the price." Ken couldn't bear it any longer. He shook off the secretary's hands, charged up, and slapped Wendy. "Wendy, are you blind?" In the previous life, Ken's family went bankrupt shortly after their marriage, and he was always submissive to Wendy. Wendy never respected him. This was the first time this man she despised so much had slapped her, and she went mad. "Ken, who do you think you are?" She pushed Ken away roughly. "A spoiled rich kid who thinks money makes you invincible. Let me tell you, in a few years, your family will be bankrupt." With those words, even Ken's father, standing not far away, turned livid. Finally, Ken stormed out, and Wendy chased after him, leaving just my family in the hospital room. My dad was so anxious he was rubbing his hands together. "Wendy, why did you have to offend Ken?" My dad had recently started a small business relying on Ken's family resources. With Wendy offending Ken like this, his business was as good as dead. Wendy frowned impatiently. "Dad, don't be so short-sighted. Business is just business." She looked at Jack like he was a precious gem, gently saying, "With Jack, we'll have everything." In the following days, my parents were busy dealing with Ken's family making things difficult in business. Wendy was busy being sweet with Jack at the hospital. I was busy studying and making money. Everyone had a bright future. When Wendy came home to make soup for Jack, she caught me diligently working on my homework. "Study hard," she sneered. "Study as much as you want, but even if you go to the best university, you'll still end up working for someone else." I ignored her, focusing on my homework. In my last life, I was forced to be with Jack and never had a chance to go to college. Later, I earned a degree through adult education, but it always felt like something was missing. Wendy didn't understand that not all actions are for money. Money is a tool to achieve happiness, not happiness itself. For example, I wanted to experience 4 years of college, have a pure, unpolluted campus romance, gossip with roommates, discuss the future, and go for late-night snacks after club activities. These were joys I had never experienced in my previous life. After Wendy left, I met up with my sister-in-law. She had her lower face covered with a silk scarf, and I had my baseball cap pulled down low. We both looked like we were up to something shady. "I've been following your instructions to buy and sell," my cousin said. "This money is yours." She handed me a bank book. To my surprise, besides the initial $2,000, she had added all the money I earned. "What are you doing?" I said. "This profit was earned with your principal. That's your money. I should just take a cut." She waved me off. "I didn't do anything. Why should I take the money? I just lent you $2,000, and now you've returned it. I can't keep the profit. It's asking to be struck by lightning." We went back and forth for a while, but she wouldn't budge. "Here's the deal," I said. "I'll hire you." She was puzzled. "Hire me for what?" "I need to prepare for exams, so I need help with a lot of things. Plus, I can't open my own account until I'm 18. I'll still need to use your account. You should get a commission for this." She waved dismissively. "We're family." I grabbed her hand. "And when I graduate, I plan to start my own business. I hope you'll be my BD." She looked confused. "What's BD?" "Business development. You're outgoing, good at talking, likable, and great at networking. I think this job suits you." Before she could respond, we heard something at the front door. Wendy and Jack were back. We exchanged a knowing look and dispersed without a sound. This was our plan all along. We had a significant amount of money, and it wasn't safe. Until I was strong enough, no one could know we made this money. I went home alone and heard Wendy and Jack happily chatting in the bedroom. Jack's voice carried the excitement of someone about to achieve greatness. Alan said that the others were average, but not me. He immediately saw that I wasn't ordinary, and decided to teach me everything he knows about investing. Wendy was ecstatic. "Jack, I knew this day would come." I peeled an apple in the kitchen and ate it. "Oh, Alan, now I get it. In my previous life, Wendy went to an ordinary university for prep, thanks to my parents' money. She never met Alan, but I did meet him. This Alan was always dapper in a three-piece suit. He had a captivating personality, and gave gripping speeches about achieving financial freedom. Alan's appearance was perfect for Wendy's expectations. Jack had started as a good-for-nothing punk, but he became a multi-billionaire known as Q. This transformation was like a talentless boy turning into a legendary hero, which must involve some magical training or expert guidance. And now, Wendy thought she had found a miracle in Alan. "Tomorrow we'll go see Alan again. Jack, you study hard with Alan and don't worry about anything else." Jack seemed troubled. "But what about the $60,000 apprenticeship fee?" "I'll find a way," Wendy said firmly. I almost bit into my apple core. I knew Wendy wasn't very smart, but I didn't realize her brain was this smooth. If she could blame all her past failures on picking the wrong man, then she would naturally trust that her ticket to success was in paying a $60,000 fee to a guy named Alan. I met Alan in the previous life, and Jack was thrilled, begging to follow Alan to get rich. I stopped him. Even though I was also young and inexperienced, I could tell something was off about Alan. If someone really knew how to make tons of money, they wouldn't spend their time teaching others. Why would someone that wealthy need to charge $60,000 for an apprenticeship? Jack called me narrow-minded back then. He said I was underestimating Alan's generosity. Alan wasn't in it for the money. He just wanted to help us get rich. Then why charge a $60,000 fee? It was a way to screen people, so Alan could see our commitment. In the end, since I refused to agree, Jack went to Alan himself. He didn't have the fee, but Alan didn't make a big deal and agreed to take him under his wing, making Jack admire him even more. They went south together, and I didn't hear from Jack for over a year. When I finally saw Jack again, he had escaped from a pyramid scheme and called me, crying for help. "Daisy, save me." I did feel a bit of pity for Wendy and Jack, heading straight for Alan. That night, I overheard Wendy talking to my mom. "Mom, Daisy will turn 18 this weekend. I think she can start dating. Jack knows a rich old guy. He's older, but is willing to pay an $18,000 bride price. Our family's struggling. Dad's business is gone, and Jack has this opportunity, but he needs $60,000. So maybe we can arrange for Daisy to meet him, if not for any other reason, for the bride price." Turns out, Wendy's plan to raise the $60,000 was to sell me off. That sliver of pity I felt faded completely. "Go ahead and ruin yourselves, Wendy. I'm really looking forward to watching you dig your own grave." Sure enough, on my 18th birthday, my family did something unusual, and got me a birthday cake with cream. My present was a new dress, and my parents made me spin around in front of the mirror, praising me. Daisy is really turning into a beauty at 18. Even Wendy chimed in with admiration. Daisy is so cute and does well in her studies. Rich people love that. My parents took the opportunity to bring up the topic of me dating. Though he's a few years older. Thanks, he's 47 and I'm 18. But his nice, older men are more considerate. Thanks, his 2 previous wives divorced him because they couldn't handle his domestic violence. Internally, I cursed, but outwardly, I smiled sweetly. Sure. Thanks to my parents and Wendy for worrying about my future. I'm willing to go on a blind date, but I'm taking the college entrance exam soon. Let's meet him after the exams. My parents and Wendy didn't expect me to be so cooperative, and were very pleased. At night, I overheard them talking. They guessed Daisy knew she couldn't find anyone good on her own. Once she hears he's rich, she'll definitely be willing. I sneered while continuing to study. Before I knew it, it was time for the exams. Since I wasn't forced to marry Jack in this life, I was able to take the exams smoothly. I've always been a good student, so when I finished the last exam and handed in my paper, I felt confident. After leaving the exam hall, I didn't go home. I went straight to the hotel. My sister-in-law Rachel was already waiting there. Here's what you asked for. She handed me a newly bought suitcase. Inside were clothes, a computer, a phone, and toiletries. All purchased according to the list I gave her. I wasn't planning on going back home. You know, if you leave like this, your parents will probably freak out. I grabbed the suitcase. Even if they freak out, it will only be because of the lost bride price, not because of me. I looked at my sister-in-law earnestly. Come with me, Rachel. This summer, I'm going to a place with lots of opportunities. You can be my BD, and we'll make a lot of money together. Rachel's hands, accustomed to housework, clenched the edges of her apron tightly. I could see she was scared. After a long pause, she sighed. Daisy, you go. You're meant for big things. I can't do it. Rachel said goodbye to Daisy and went home alone. She cried all the way. She hated herself, but she didn't even know exactly what she hated. She wasn't a brave person, and had spent the first half of her life following orders. When her parents told her to stop studying, she stopped. When they told her to take care of her younger brother, she became his second mom. When they told her to marry to get the money for her brother's bride, she married a man who hit her. Whatever her husband told her to do, she did. Everyone around her seemed to live the same way. No one resisted. The only person who taught her to resist was Daisy, a girl who had just turned 18. Girls at that age are always full of naive courage. But Rachel hadn't had courage even as a little girl, and now, at her age, she had even less. Rachel went home. The house was a mess. Her husband lay on the mattress, surrounded by empty bottles. As soon as she walked in, a bottle flew past her, shattering against the door frame, splinters hitting her. Home so late, trying to starve me. These kinds of conversations happened daily. Rachel lowered her head and went to the kitchen to cook. She chopped the vegetables loudly, trying to drown out her husband's curses, but the insults still flooded her ears. You don't work, you don't bring in any money, you eat my food, and live in my house. So you better take care of me. And don't give me any crap about that cyst medical record. I'm telling you, if you don't give me a son this year, I'll break your legs. Rachel silently chopped vegetables. A strange warmth flowed through her heart, and she chopped faster and faster. She remembered many things. She remembered her savings account, which had 10,000 in it, all left by Daisy, while her husband gave her only 1,000 a month for household expenses, and still blamed her for not knowing how to manage. Rachel remembered Daisy's words. Rachel, awakening is a long process, but also a sudden moment. We all think if we just bear it, life will go on. But it doesn't. There will be a moment when you think, I'm done. At that moment, you'll step into a whole new world. Rachel was chopping potatoes when her husband yelled, "Is it done yet? What's taking so long in the kitchen? Trying to starve me, running around all day. Should tie you up with a dog leash." Rachel suddenly slammed the knife onto the cutting board. She said, "Screw this." It was a peculiar afternoon. Rachel's husband suddenly saw his famously good-natured wife rush out of the kitchen with a knife, screaming, "Screw this. I'm done." Rachel ran out of the house. She left everything behind, her carefully managed home, her marriage, her original family. She didn't look back once. She ran down the road. Ahead was a stunning sunset, but she had a strong feeling. She was heading toward a new world. Just as I was about to leave the hotel for the train station, Rachel ran up. She had lost a slipper, her hair was a mess, and she still wore an apron. She came up, out of breath. "Daisy, I've made up my mind. I'm coming with you," I said. "Put the knife down first." On the day she said goodbye to the old world, my sister-in-law Rachel had been chopping vegetables in the kitchen. In her excitement, she forgot to put the knife down. Luckily, the sight of the knife stopped her violent husband from trying to stop her, and she could escape safely. I bought Rachel a new pair of shoes and then got her a train ticket. She kept looking at me with bright eyes. Daisy, you mentioned making me a BD. What do I need to learn? Even though I'm old, I can learn. I corrected her. Also, you're not old. At 25, you still have time for everything. Yes, there's still time, she said cheerfully. Daisy, I think I can be a great BD. It's fine. Starting is always good. The future gives us plenty of time. The train started down the tracks, the sun setting like gold outside the window. My sister-in-law was excitedly studying a vocabulary book beside me, and I leaned against the window, gazing at the endless scenery. The next 10 years are going to be a decade of soaring success. Opportunities are endless. I'm ready. This time, I'm only going to do better than before. I saw Wendy again 3 years later. She and Jack had escaped from a pyramid scheme den and were making statements at the police station. Since I was a relative, the police called me in. When I saw Wendy again, I almost didn't recognize her. Even though only 3 years had passed, Wendy looked like she had aged 20 years. She already had gray hair and deep wrinkles between her eyebrows, while Jack was hunched over and had a sly look in his eyes. How should I put it? Went from a small-time crook to an old crook. Wendy couldn't recognize me either. I wore a silk dress with no logos, but you could tell it was expensive from the fabric. My previously dark and thin skin had turned fair and delicate, and my once dull yellow hair had become jet black and silky, casually draped over my shoulders. The car that took me to the police station was a familiar Rolls-Royce. The driver in white gloves opened the door for me, and bodyguards in black suits followed silently behind. Wendy was stunned watching me sit in front of her. No, impossible. I pretended to be confused. What's impossible? You didn't marry Jack. Jack is mine. Wendy's voice suddenly became hoarse and screeching. How are you rich? I frowned impatiently. It's been 3 years since we last saw each other, and this is how you greet me. When did I ever try to snatch Jack from you? He's definitely yours, rest assured. My tone was very cold. I already knew what happened 3 years ago. Right after the college entrance exam, I ran away. My parents couldn't find me, so the arranged marriage fell through. To raise the $60,000 for Jack's apprenticeship fee, Wendy took out a high-interest loan. She firmly believed investing in Jack was worth it, and no amount of interest could overshadow Jack's future wealth. Then one wrong step led to another. Loyal to Alan, they followed him south and ended up in a pyramid scheme den. They were controlled, beaten, and had their freedom restricted. Wendy nearly went crazy and repeatedly asked Jack, "Did you experience this in your past life?" But Jack hadn't reincarnated, so he couldn't answer her. At this moment, Wendy faced me, trying hard to figure out what went wrong. After a long while, she gave me a creepy smile. I understand now. You memorized the stocks Jack bought in the last life and replicated his actions this time, didn't you? I played with the jade ring on my finger. Couldn't be bothered to respond to Wendy. With that level of intelligence, she's really not worth talking to. A great opportunity to start again is right in front of her, and she could have at least memorized some lottery numbers, but nope. She just fixated on Jack. Doesn't matter. Jack escaped from the pyramid scheme. He can buy stocks later on. Daisy, you just wait and see. This lifetime, I will definitely live better than you. So, after leaving the police station, Wendy borrowed money wherever she could to raise enough for Jack to buy stocks. But I don't know anything about this. Jack was very perplexed. Don't worry, you're Q God. You can buy based on your intuition. Jack didn't know what Q God was, but listening to Wendy's flattery, and reading a few stories online about getting rich through stock trading, he got all fired up, thinking his turn was next. So he bought a large amount. At first, he actually made some money by luck. Wendy was overjoyed, and they soon invested all their money back into the stock market. Then, an unprecedented crash happened. Wendy couldn't believe it. She gripped Jack's hand. It's okay, Jack, you're Q God. We can definitely make a comeback. They decided to get a good night's sleep and figure out a plan the next day. The next morning, Jack woke up, rubbing his eyes, and said to Wendy, I had a dream. In my dream, in the last life, when Daisy and I were in the equipment room, you didn't barge in. So we ended up getting married. Later, you went on to study and married Ken. I stayed with Daisy in our hometown. Alan showed up, and I wanted to be his apprentice, but Daisy wouldn't let me. I went behind her back, and got scammed into the pyramid scheme. Years later, I escaped, and Daisy came to bail me out. By then, she was very wealthy. She said she didn't want to care about me, but if I still wanted to follow her, I'd have to work for her. She made me do interviews with the media. They took my pictures and called me Q God. I agreed and repeated the lines Daisy told me to. Actually, I didn't understand anything. I was just a shield for Daisy, and those who hated Q God would take it out on me. I nearly got beaten to death a few times. I knew Daisy hated me. This was her way of punishing me, but I didn't dare leave, nor tell the truth, because I was scared Daisy wouldn't care about me anymore. Then I'd just be a complete loser in society. Jack finished speaking and saw Wendy's face looking dreadful. He waved his hand in front of her. Mad at me? Jack coaxed her. I dreamt of being with your sister. Are you jealous? Sorry, I definitely love you the most. Jack mumbled in confusion, but that dream was too detailed, wasn't it? Before Jack could finish, Wendy let out a piercing scream. She tore at her hair, screamed like crazy, and even banged her head against the wall. Jack hadn't grabbed her in time, and Wendy fainted. So, when your sister woke up, she was like this. In the mental hospital, I watched the woman before me. She had gone insane, sitting on the bed, laughing foolishly, and then bursting into tears. I gave so much, so much. I'm the female protagonist in a rebirth story. Rebirth heroines always rise to the top. Why didn't anything change? I told Jack to leave and sat down next to Wendy. You don't get it. Rebirth isn't what's useful. It's the advantage of information asymmetry, changes in thinking and perception, and you don't have any of that. But still, thanks for sending me back. I sincerely appreciate it. Because of you, I've lived a very successful life. Wendy stared at me. After a moment, she screamed again. Keep an eye on her. Don't let her hurt herself. I instructed the medical staff and then left the psychiatric hospital. Today, I had someone important to meet. Deep in an alley was a small shop with a blue-tiled roof. There was a sign at the door, Wish Shop. It looked like a shop only middle schoolers would visit. I walked in. A handsome young man was dozing off behind the counter, hugging a big yellow cat. When he heard the noise, he immediately stood up. Welcome. He froze for a moment when he saw my face. Sorry for the wait. What's your wish? I smiled. Drop the act. I know my sister got her chance at rebirth because of you all. It took me a long time to find this clue. This inconspicuous little shop had a manager named Victoria and an assistant manager named Jason. The information I found was strange. Victoria was just an ordinary college girl, but I couldn't find anything about Jason. At that moment, Jason handed me a cup of hot tea. I wasn't interested in drinking it. I got straight to the point. Name your price. I can pay whatever. I just have one request. No more rebirths for Wendy. Yes, that's what I want to do. Block Wendy's path to another rebirth. Jason was taken aback for a moment, then laughed. You might have misunderstood. Our actual client isn't Wendy, it's you. I frowned. Time reversal is a high-cost service. We only offer it to the most deserving customers. You were someone we selected a long time ago. Then why didn't you come to me? I asked. We tried. Many times we left flyers where you could see them, sent text messages, but you ignored them all. It was quite possible. I was incredibly busy, swamped in work. Even important emails needed my assistant's reminder. There was no way I'd notice what looked like junk ads. So we turned to Wendy instead. She had a lot of unresolved issues from her past and readily accepted. I raised an eyebrow. Did she know she was being used? Come on, used is a strong word, Jason said, shrugging. In the sunlight, his features glowed with a golden hue. Yes, we gave her rebirth. The cost was taking you along for the ride as well. All terms were laid out clearly, and she agreed. Straight business. As for what happens after, that's out of our control. Whether one defies fate or makes it worse is up to individual capability. We're not responsible, you see. Then one last question, I said. Why choose me? That's simple. You've already answered it with your actions, Jason said with a smile. This time, you changed your investment path, putting more effort into the real economy. You created nearly 10,000 jobs and drove manufacturing reform. He added, many lives changed because of you. Like Rachel. There was a picture of Rachel on a financial magazine on Jason's counter. She was smiling radiantly, successful as a female entrepreneur, no longer the woman who met a tragic end due to domestic violence in the past life. And many more women like Rachel, Jason noted. It's been a deal well worth our while. When Victoria returned to the Wish shop, Jason was searching for something to cover his instant noodles. Want a bite? Jason asked. Victoria ignored him, opened her notebook, and confirmed the follow-up details of the business. Wendy would spend the rest of her life in a psychiatric hospital. Her parents, bankrupt and in debt. Jack, sick and homeless. Ken was in prison for assault, and his father was a convict. Victoria noted the outcomes of these side characters, but none of this should matter to Ms. Daisy. These people couldn't stop her in the last life, and they couldn't in this one either. As Ms. Daisy said, she'd only lead more people to greater heights. Finished with her thoughts, Victoria looked at the noodles in front of Jason. "What's that?" "Instant noodles," Jason replied. "I asked if you wanted some." "No, I mean the thing beside it. The one you used to wipe the soup." Jason glanced over, dumbfounded. "It's the check Ms. Daisy left us." He had accidentally wiped the spilled noodle soup with the check Ms. Daisy gave to thank them. A check worth an enormous amount. It couldn't be used now. "Quick, let me go back 10 minutes. Quickly." Victoria was exasperated. "Jason, that's not how we use our power. Hurry, let me go back. It's over 50 million. A mini rebirth occurred within the shop, and the next wealthy client was probably already on the way.